The Gardener. The official story begins with a strange new racket that simply appears on the professional tennis circuit, a bizarre tool that seems to defy the very physics of the game. Its impact is immediate and bewildering, leaving opponents and spectators struggling to understand what they are witnessing. This isn't an incremental innovation from a known brand like Wilson or Head. It's a radical departure, an alien technology that emerges from the shadows without warning. The establishment has no category for it, because its origins lie far outside the traditional world of sport. The hidden truth is that this story doesn't start on a court, but in a garden in Germany, 5 years earlier in 1972. The racket's inventor is Werner Fischer, a horticulturalist with a peculiar obsession. He believes the graceful, high-spin shots of table tennis can be replicated on a tennis court. He develops a prototype, not for fame, but to solve this specific engineering problem, creating a tool that can grip the ball in a way no one had ever imagined. When Fischer presents his creation to Germany's top tennis professionals, they flatly reject the design as a mere gimmick, a toy unworthy of serious consideration. But while the pros laugh, a strange phenomenon begins to occur. Fischer's local amateur club team, armed with his invention, starts dominating their leagues, a quiet but undeniable signal that this horticulturalist's strange idea was dangerously effective. The blueprint. Everyone on the court can see that the racket produces a bafflingly heavy and unpredictable topspin, making the ball dive and kick in ways that seem to defy the laws of the game. This erratic behavior gives rise to its now infamous nickname, the spaghetti racket, a derisive term inspired by the chaotic, noodle-like appearance of its string bed. But the official story, which frames it as a quirky and inconsistent tool, completely misses the point of its revolutionary design. The key detail is hidden in plain sight, because the visual chaos is not a flaw, but the very source of its unprecedented power. The hidden truth lies in a two-layered system of non-interwoven strings, a radical departure from a century of racket construction. Werner Fischer's blueprint calls for a standard grid of loose nylon main strings, but then adds thin plastic tubing and strands of fishing line that run vertically between them, completely unattached. This construction means that upon impact, the strings don't snap back into place. Instead, the layers slide past each other, physically grabbing the felt of the tennis ball and holding it for milliseconds longer than any conventional racket. The consequence of this extended contact is a frightening amount of rotation, a level of spin that transforms a simple shot into an unplayable weapon. A gardener's strange theory has now been perfected into a working blueprint for chaos, but it still lacks a champion to expose its power to the world. The Nobody. The weapon needs a wielder, and it finds one not in a top-ranked champion, but in an absolute unknown. Mike Fischbach is a journeyman professional, the kind of player ranked 205 in the world who fights just to qualify for major tournaments. He isn't on the radar of fans or sponsors, but he discovers the strange double-strung racket in a local pro shop and sees its potential. In a move that perfectly captures the outsider nature of this story, Fischbach and his brother take the racket home and begin to reverse engineer its unusual construction, learning the secrets of the design far from the tennis world's elite academies. This garage-level experimentation is then unleashed on one of the sport's biggest stages, the 1977 US Open. Fischbach's opponent is the formidable Stan Smith, a former Wimbledon and US Open champion and the tournament's 16th seed. What follows is not just an upset, it's a demolition that sends a shockwave through the entire sport, as the unheralded Fischbach deploys the bizarre racket to win the match with a stunning scoreline of 6-0, 6-2. The consequence of this brutal victory is that the spaghetti racket can no longer be ignored or dismissed as a mere curiosity. A weapon of this power, capable of making a nobody completely dominate a somebody, is now a proven threat to the tennis hierarchy, and the sport's most cunning players are beginning to take notice. The Protest. The weapon's true potential for chaos is finally realized when it falls into the hands of Ilie Nastase, the brilliant and volatile former world number one. His opponent is the Argentinian titan Guillermo Vilas, a player who is in the midst of a seemingly unbreakable 46-match winning streak, the longest in the history of the men's game. But the hidden truth is that Nastase's decision to use the spaghetti racket is not random. It's a calculated act of cynical gamesmanship. Just days before this final, Nastase himself had been a victim of the racket, losing to a lower-ranked player who used it against him. So he adopts the disruptive technology not for innovation, but for revenge. The match becomes a watershed moment for the sport, as Nastase leverages the racket's bizarre spin to completely neutralize the invincible Vilas, storming to a 6-1 lead in the first set. The key evidence of the crisis comes in the second set. Facing an illegitimate end to his historic streak, Vilas makes the ultimate stand. Down 7-5, he refuses to continue, picking up his gear and walking off the court in disgust, forfeiting the match rather than dignify the technology by competing against it. The consequence of this public protest is enormous, because the spaghetti racket is no longer a tool for journeymen. It is now a weapon wielded by the world's best to shatter an all-time record, triggering an immediate and furious backlash from players who see the very soul of their sport being corrupted. The uproar. The official story is that top players are beginning to formally complain, arguing that the spaghetti racket is fundamentally unfair. But the hidden truth behind the uproar is not just about fairness. It is a cold, professional dread that the racket completely negates a lifetime of practice and nullifies the very concept of traditional skill. All the subtle arts of tennis, the delicate touch shots, the tactical use of spin, the ability to read an opponent's intentions are rendered instantly obsolete by a tool that requires almost no technique to produce an unplayable shot. This fear is amplified by a bizarre, almost unsettling detail. The racket makes virtually no sound upon impact, producing devastating shots with an eerie, unnatural silence that underscores its alien presence on the court. This growing panic is given a credible voice by Arthur Ashe, the tour's respected intellectual and a former champion, who declares that the spin generated by the racket is impossible for any player to duplicate through legitimate means. His statement confirms what everyone is witnessing. This is no longer a contest of human skill, but a mechanical advantage that rewrites the physics of the game. The immediate consequence is that professional tennis is becoming unwatchable, devolving from a strategic duel into a chaotic game of chance where long, compelling rallies are replaced by awkward, abbreviated points. The integrity of the sport is now openly in question, creating an unprecedented crisis that moves beyond the players and lands squarely at the feet of the sport's governing bodies. The ban. Facing an existential threat to the game itself, the International Tennis Federation, or ITF, moves to outlaw the spaghetti racket. This official ban is a landmark decision, not just because it removes the controversial equipment, but because it represents the first time in the history of modern tennis that a specific racket has ever been deemed illegal. The hidden truth is that for a century, the official rulebook contained virtually no meaningful restrictions on racket design. The unspoken assumption was that innovation would always exist within the traditional bounds of the sport. The spaghetti racket shatters that gentleman's agreement, forcing the authorities to confront a reality they never imagined, that a single piece of technology could hold the entire game hostage. The true measure of the panic it induced is revealed in the speed of the response from the sport's highest governing body. The ITF issues a temporary ban in October 1977, a mere 5 months after Mike Fishbach's shocking run at the US Open exposed the racket's giant killing potential to the world. For a notoriously deliberative organization, this lightning-fast verdict acts as an emergency intervention, a desperate move to stop the bleeding and restore order to a sport spiraling into chaos. The ban quickly becomes permanent, officially ending the short, disruptive reign of Werner Fischer's invention. But while the immediate threat is neutralized, its ghost now haunts the rulebook, exposing a foundational weakness that the Federation must now scramble to fix. The new rules. The official story presented by the International Tennis Federation is one of prudent governance. They announce they are merely clarifying the existing equipment regulations to maintain the sport's integrity. It is framed as a simple administrative update, a necessary bit of housekeeping to ensure fair play for all. But the hidden truth is that this is not a general clarification, but a surgical strike aimed directly at the heart of Werner Fischer's invention. The governing body is retroactively writing a law with a single target in mind, ensuring that the spaghetti racket and anything like it can never legally exist again. The key evidence is found in the precise language of the new regulations, which now state that strings must be interwoven and exist on a single plane. This clause, which had never been necessary before, functions as a perfect kill switch for the double-strung system, outlawing its core design principle by name. The consequence is immense, as this rule change doesn't just ban one racket, it permanently closes an entire avenue of technological innovation, effectively freezing racket design in a more traditional configuration. In a final, bitter irony, the inventor, Werner Fischer, had already filed multiple patents for his creation, following the rules of innovation perfectly, only to watch the game itself be rewritten to make his blueprint illegal. The lawsuit. The official story is that the marketers behind the spaghetti racket simply fought the ban, but this sanitizes the true nature of the conflict. With the rules rewritten to make their product illegal, they refuse to accept defeat and instead escalate the war from the court of tennis to a court of law. The hidden truth is that they file a massive $2 million lawsuit against the United States Tennis Association, one of the most powerful governing bodies in the sport. Their key evidence is no longer about spin rates or rally lengths. It is a powerful legal argument claiming that the ban constitutes an illegal restraint of trade, accusing the tennis establishment of acting as a cartel to crush a disruptive and legitimate business innovation. This legal battle forces a fascinating question. Is tennis primarily a sport with a unique character to preserve, or is it a commercial marketplace that must adhere to free market principles? The court's ultimate decision has massive consequences, as it sides with the USTA, upholding the ban by affirming a sport's right to define its own rules to preserve its essential character. Yet, even in defeat, the marketers engage in one last act of rebellion, creating their own rogue spaghetti bowl tournament circuit in a defiant attempt to keep the technology alive. This quirky, unsanctioned tour is a final, fleeting protest, but the legal verdict is clear. The establishment has won, and the racket is officially dead. But while the physical racket may be gone, the ghost of its design is about to haunt the sport for decades to come. The ghost. The official story ends with the spaghetti racket disappearing completely from the professional tour, a bizarre footnote relegated to the history books. On the surface, the ban worked perfectly, and the strange device, along with its inventor and marketers, fades into obscurity. But the hidden truth is far more complex, because while the physical racket was exiled, the revolutionary idea it represented, the pursuit of extreme, game-breaking spin, was unleashed forever. The spaghetti racket may be gone, but its ghost now haunts the research and development labs of every major manufacturer, triggering a technological arms race with a single, obsessive goal. That goal is to legally reverse engineer the racket's unplayable effects, and the key evidence of this race is visible in every piece of modern equipment. With layered strings now forbidden, manufacturers search for spin in the two places left, the frame and the strings themselves. The consequence is a direct line from the 1,977 ban to the game we see today, as this pursuit leads to the creation of powerful graphite frames for faster swing speeds, open string patterns for more ball bite, and crucially, the development of stiff polyester strings that are the true engine of modern topspin. In the final, stunning revelation, the spin rates generated by today's top players are now approaching the same chaotic levels as the original spaghetti racket, proving that the ghost was eventually caught. The ban technology that was once cast out for corrupting the sport has, through decades of legal innovation, successfully rewritten its DNA and become the new standard.
If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe for video. Thanks for watching.